Current events are cause for much concern. Democracies are under threat due to Wall Street and fossil fuel-driven corruption. Despots are getting love notes from presidents. Peaceful protesters are attacked by the state for exercising their rights. International interests are driving genocidal conflict to seize land and resources and exterminate the local population. Threats of nuclear war, supply chain disruptions, pandemics, food shortages, and water scarcity, all while your political class cashes checks from the same groups that profit from this suffering and chaos. Our corporate media clutches their pearls saying how unprecedented all of this is, while trying to blame the working class as ignorant for voting against their own interests. However, when you ask most people, they hate both of the parties. The main division is which is the lesser evil. People might not agree on who is worse, but most people agree that government does not work for them, and our leadership is not equal to today's challenges. In truth, while some of the expressions of this dysfunction may be new, this chaos is nothing new, and is in fact part of a predictable cycle that is as present in societal development as it is in science. After all, throughout the generations of human societal development, we have been reinventing society on the ashes of the last one. We build civilization while corruption, entitlement, and the laziness of the ruling class eventually tear it down. This cycle was laid out in the exceptional observations of American physicist and philosopher Thomas Kuhn in his 1962 book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. In his book, Kuhn outlines the stages of scientific development. The first part, which does not repeat itself, the pre-science stage, gives way to the first step of the cycle, which is the stage of normal science, where known science is holding up quite well. The second stage is called model drift. This is where many of the understandings from the first stage start to be challenged by new information, but the drift is not so egregious compared to reality. The current paradigm is bruised, but still relatively healthy and agreed upon. But then questions begin to arise. This leads to the third stage, as referred to as model crisis. By that point, the entire structure is being called into question for its failure to address much of what it is supposed to do, based on observational reality. Unfortunately, by that point, you have PhDs that have built their entire careers staking out positions that are now being fundamentally challenged by new information. An entire career erased, not necessarily because they were bad scientists, but because they did not have access to the technologies that picked up all of those inconsistencies, as they did not yet exist. But when that work is your professional and intellectual legacy built over 35 years in academia, it can be very hard for many to say, "I was wrong." The fourth stage is model revolution. This is where scientists create a new framework in which to operate that matches currently understood observations. In this stage, you can begin to see the green shoots of a coming renaissance in scientific advancement and exploration. This is the stage of science where many heroes are made. Einstein, Tesla, Curie, Heisenberg, and so many others, many of whom, in the field of physics, met at the 1927 Solvay Conference, while physics was undergoing paradigm shift. After this revolution, scientists return to stage one, normal science, and the cycle continues. Now, replace science with society, and think of the history of humanity. You can see elements of the very same cycle with a major difference. While there are scientists that are committed to old ideas, there is usually a decent number of scientists that are committed to advancing scientific knowledge, who see an undiscovered country of ideas and understanding as the opportunity it is, who are reminded of why they love science in the first place. Unfortunately, politics are driven by political leaders' love of power and their loyalty to the donor class, making them generally conservative regarding the direction of the system. If you are a disruptive political leader, there is an entire apparatus to marginalize you and keep you as far away from meaningful power as the system can push you. If corporate-funded think tanks pay some scientists hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a year, it can get enough of them on board to sow doubt about the harms of smoking or the threat of climate change. But there are so many scientists out there that it would not be cost-effective to bribe them all. However, it doesn't really matter when all you need to do is to delay until democracy is ended, or until people give up and say there is no way to stop the problem because we've gone past the tipping point. So why try? Either way, the fossil fuel industry wins. There are far fewer national leaders, however, so that same checkbook is open to them all. And as the evidence stacks up against fossil fuel interests, zeros stack up on the checks written to our leaders' campaigns and super PACs. Given that the political parties choose who gets to represent them, as long as some of that money goes to the parties, they will ensure that there are plenty of fossil fuel and oligarch-loyal party representatives who will have the support of the party establishment. That, in turn, will pull support from party members that don't toe the corporate line and replace them with more feckless elected officials to represent the party. We saw this during the Democratic primaries before the 2016 presidential election with strident insider support for the Clinton campaign. At other times, in order to cling to power, politicians seek war to distract from how unqualified they are to hold such a position of public trust. This also served to shield fossil fuel allies for their complicity in the 9/11 attacks, as seen with the W administration. They literally terrorized you while hiding their benefactors' complicity to maintain power and drive profits. This degree of corruption means that the third, fourth stages of a societal paradigm shift can be considerably more painful and chaotic for the working class than they need to be. After all, how often do you see a politician say, "Everything I thought about this topic was fundamentally wrong, and I made mistakes in my policy decisions," and follow that with a significant alteration of their behavior reflecting that lesson? Unfortunately, there have been some societies that did not make the transition to reflect their contemporary reality. As such, what you are experiencing is not only normal, but also intentional on the part of leaders that want to maintain the status quo on behalf of a donor class that profits from the suffering. But as with many things, this too shall pass if you and your neighbor consider it time for a change. The question for you is what you want the new paradigm to be under your generation to leave for your children. This time has its painful aspects, as leaders stoke chaos and war, so we cling to their ideologies that much harder out of fear, mourning the long-lost security that you yourself may never have known, but at least at the time believed attainable. But if you can bury your fear and stand by and for your neighbor, you can shape a better future, wielding the same economic tools that corporations use against Main Street to take away that security. You can use those tools to defend yourself and free your community from corporate rule by proxy by not overthrowing your nations that have been left to you in trust by the working class of generations before you. Instead, you can overthrow the corporations that presume to think that they can take away your rights, your children's future, and dignified retirement. The choice is yours: UBI and healthcare, or technocratic authoritarianism and generations of suffering. Remember, war is not necessarily part of human nature. It is part of our institutions and the ambitions of those in charge of running those institutions. Mass slaughter requires organization. So this choice will be given to you not by a politician, but by the efforts of your neighbor. Would you rather stand with those corporate and political leaders who don't want to improve the society that currently makes them rich? Or would you rather stand with your neighbors who want to make a better, more advanced society? If you choose that better future, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to make sure more of our neighbors get the message.